The last time we had Xiomaro on, he was doing some photographic work of historic sites for the National Park Service, which at the time seemed like a pretty smart idea, considering all the dismantling and gosh knows what that's been up with this administration as it pertains to historical sites like the White House itself and the demolition of the East Wing and all that. So Zio was going over to Greenland and asked if he could come talk about his trip after he came back. And my journalistic curiosity was like, yeah, you know what? I got to know what the people of Greenland are saying. And, it had been some time since all the talk of taking Greenland, it had kind of died down a bit with the multiple levels of and entry points of craziness that have happened in every day since then. But there, just yesterday, I saw talk from the president himself, again, reigniting this topic. Am I on base there? And tell me everything, Sio, about going to Greenland, how the trip happened, and what you experienced and heard from the people.
Well, you're absolutely correct that just this week, in fact, ever since I got back, which is maybe about a week and a half ago now, it's been in the news again. Now, for Greenlanders, of course, it's different. For them, it's an everyday concern. They've been dealing with it, they began with it when it first came up during his first administration, but certainly in January when he threatened military action.
And I imagine it has not died down for them.
No.
Even if there has been no mention, because
no,
this is very significant.
It's ever present for them. It's very few people know much about Greenland because it's just, we see it on the map and it's huge. It's the largest island in the world. It's even bigger than the state of Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. And yet there's not a lot of people there. It's only about 55,000 people who live there. You can fit basically everybody, I think, in Dodger Stadium. I think they have enough seats to accommodate everybody who lives in Greenland. And most of the population's in the west.
Okay.
And in the south, because there's less ice there than there is basically the whole country is an ice sheet. So there they have access to the port tunnel.
Greenland is icy and Iceland is green? Is that
Is
that right?
Yeah, Greenland was a marketing term. See, marketing has been around for a long time. About 1,000 years ago, I think it was 985 AD.
Probably as long as people.
Probably, sure.
I'm sure there's instances of marketing in nature too. Think of birds and mating rituals.
Well, it's a color thing. Eric
Yes.
the Red, who was a Viking from Iceland, he was convicted of murder in Iceland. He was sent away. He ended up he discovered, I'm putting that quotation marks, Greenland. And so he called it Greenland, even though it's certainly not very green. It's mostly ice, but as a way to attract other settlers to come in. But the Inuit, they've been there for about 4,500 years, 4,500 years. So for them, they've been there longer than we've been in America, what we call America. And so for them, a threat like this is, monumental. But they've been isolated for, all these years for the most part. Look, the average American, other than when we see it on the map, I looked into it. I was curious how many people actually visit Greenland. And it's 0.01% of the American population has been there. It's about 35,000 people, I think, who, travel there.
Have even gone.
And when they do go.
And you're saying have gone, not like this past year.
Correct. Oh, wow. Every year, more or less.
Okay.
But when they do go, they tend to go in the summer because the weather is a little bit more tolerable than it was when I went. And they usually go to Nuuk or some of those other towns, but they basically go for the tourism. So they go on a cruise and they get to look at the icebergs. So that's not what I wanted to do. So I went in the off season, the springtime, as they call it. As far as I'm concerned, it was brutally cold.
How cold was it?
Well, the highest temperature, which was right by the time I left, it was about 39 degrees, which is not bad. But there were some days there when it was like minus, 2 degrees, at least a real field temperature.
Yeah.
And because it's all tundra, tundra means that it's treeless. So there's a lot of wind.
Yeah.
And so if you're on certain peaks, as I was, the temperature certainly was a lot colder. I mean, I basically had at one point what they call Arctic burn, which is when your face starts to turn kind of orangey from all the wind.
Wow.
So, and I'm Puerto Rican, so I like it when it's hot. I don't like it when it's that cold.
So what you said what I wanted to. So what did you want? What was your aim?
Well, like most Americans, I've seen Greenland on the map. It's always kind of intrigued me since, I learned about geography in school, but, you don't really hear about it very much.
And then suddenly the president is saying we're going to make red, white, and blue land.
Yeah. So
and
that
you're like, what's that about?
Yeah. So just like you, I have a, journalistic, curiosity. And I was saying, well, what's all this about? I know it's in the Arctic and I know what's going on up there, but, what's going on behind the story there.
And especially as a photographer, you want to be able to see for yourself and through your lens.
Well, for folks who might not have heard me on your show in the past, a lot of my photography is steeped in history. I'm frequently commissioned by the National Park Service to photograph historic places like the William Floyd Estate here on Long Island, for instance.
But also your street photography work.
And my street photography. Yeah, I started moving into street photography to capture more of contemporary history and culture. So it's not about photographing the touristy spots. I mean, I did a book on New York City, which is probably the most photographed place on the planet. But I like to photograph things that are unseen, try to get a sense of what the culture is like. So that was the approach I took with Greenland. It's like, what I'm reading in the press is mostly about the military aspect of it, the competition with China and Russia, for a presence in the Arctic, because as it starts to melt because of climate change, is going to open up new shipping routes. And also Greenland has a lot of minerals, which is really important to keep running our phones, our computers, our military. And
so this
also
is like
AI.
This is modern day warfare type stuff.
Correct. So a lot of the focus, understandably was on that, why the desire to take Greenland. But I didn't see a lot of articles about, well, how does that impact the people who live there?
And that also speaks to another, it's the same sort of problem. You're seeing that domestically, where a lot is being talked about as far as war, as far as, economics, and I feel not enough about the economics of the everyday person.
Sure. I mean, in a lot of my work, I'm very aware of the sense of the other.
Yeah.
So when you think of people as the other, this happens to us a lot.
And where does that come from for you?
Well, my family, I was born in Brooklyn, but my mother's from Puerto Rico, my father's from Cuba. So these are areas in the Caribbean that have been colonized.
Right.
And even to this day, there are some people in the U.S. who don't understand that Puerto Ricans are American citizens, and sometimes we're treated as foreigners. And so, so I kind of have an understanding, I think a bit. You
have felt othered in your life?
Yeah, and I think for Greenlanders, being isolated and, being there for thousands of years and having this distinct culture and landscape, that they might feel the same way, because Greenland is part of Denmark, so they have been colonized. And although the majority of Greenlanders don't have any interest in becoming part of the United States, according to polls that I've seen, they're also not particularly fond about Denmark either. Their desire is to eventually become independent, but it's hard to do that where they are. 90% of their economy is based on fishing, so that gets exported, but almost everything else gets imported from Denmark and from other places in Europe. So it's very expensive to live there and to just be there, and so they don't have access to a lot of different things. I mean, it's there, but it's again very, very costly. So they're not in a position yet where they can be independent. At the same time, ironically, the threat from the United States to acquire Greenland has been kind of helpful to them, because they're kind of using that as leverage against Denmark to maybe get some more freedom and more latitude on certain things. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to, just go there instead of photographing icebergs from a ship. Just photograph, well, what's it like to be there? What does it look like, for starters? I had no idea what it looks like. I didn't know, for instance, that there are no trains in Greenland.
It reminded me, this is going to be an obscure reference. when I saw the picture that I saw, my first thought was the fictional island from Midnight Mass, which is like a Netflix horror series, and a little bit like out here in some places, places that have, places that are maritime but not yet overtaken by the billionaire class.
Correct. That's a good way of describing Nuuk. Nuuk was the city that I was in. Nuuk is the capital of Greenland. They call it a city. Understandably, it has about 20,000 people, which is a lot for them. To me, it's more of a town. I would call it a town, but they call it a city. But it's 20,000 people. It's pretty close-knit. But there's some things about it that we can connect with as Americans. Coffee is pretty big there.
Nice.
A lot of coffee houses. It's a place where people congregate and hang out and can be together. It was enjoyable.
How much is a cup of coffee there?
It was a little bit more than in Starbucks.
But even so, the prices are high.
I think it was bordering $7-8 for a small cup of
Buy local,
for
guys.
a small latte.
Just
and I
saying.
love coffee, so I had to really control my budget there. But it's I wanted to capture what life is like there. Folks who are interested can go to my website,
Yes.
which is www.Xiomaro.com. And Xiomaro is a deceptive name because it doesn't start with an S. It starts with an X. So it's
Xiomaro.
Correct.
.com.
Xiomaro.com. If they go there, they'll see about 50 photographs that I selected from about 1,700 shots that I took.
I'm
Yeah.
actually surprised that it was 1,700.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of my days as a sports photographer, and I mean 1,700 would be one game.
Sure.
Easy.
There's a lot of action, so you want to get it.
So that is, but that also speaks to what a tight, decisive photographer you must be, at least stylistically.
Yeah, it's interesting you should bring that up because ever since the advent of digital photography, it's very easy to just hold the shutter down like a machine gun, go
Right.
and just take 1,000 pictures and just pick one that maybe came out okay because you got lucky. I guess because I'm older, I shoot a little bit more deliberately and intentionally. So I do a lot of looking before I do any shooting.
Wow.
And I try to get the picture pretty much done in camera, so there's not a lot of processing to do afterwards. You know,
that we share that.
but I also try to think thematically. So, I wanted to get folks really small in the landscape, so they're like little people, like just like little shadows, to give you a sense of how large the landscape and how sublime it is, especially the mountains there.
Oh, it must be so beautiful.
Oh, it is. It's just stunning, and it just changes from day to day. I mean, I would get up in the morning, and there would be this very dense fog around me, and you would see nothing in the in the horizon. And then by 3 o'clock, because it would take that long for the fog to burn off, all of a sudden a huge snow-covered mountain appears that you didn't see at all. So it's very dramatic. It's always changing. Again, I went during what they call the springtime, and I would say it's more akin to March in the U.S. or at least in the Northeast, where the weather changes a lot.
What were the people saying to you? What did you get?
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
From
The
them?
folks were very friendly, actually. Most of them are Inuit. There are some who are Danish, of course, and there's some who are mixed. Now, I went with a great degree of.
Is the culture more inclusive? What is
Yes.
it like? I mean, do you see the type of cultural separation that you see here, or is it more, as I mentioned, inclusive and supportive?
I would say they're very inclusive. There, as one fellow who basically rented me the space that I got to stay in said that they're very open-minded people, and I would say that they are, considering, for starters, because it's such a small area, small population. You don't have this degree of anonymity like you do in a big urban area, where you kind of think of just yourself and you
I imagine
get
that
to other.
helps.
Yeah,
I imagine that helps.
So, for
quite
instance,
a bit.
when I was there, I contacted several organizations to see who might be willing to speak with me and be photographed and all that. And many of them declined or didn't get back to me, understandably, because they're being very careful under the
who is
present
this guy?
circumstances.
Yeah.
But I did meet with one group, which is an LGBTQ plus organization, and I thought that was very interesting. That given a city or a town of 20,000, that they actually had an organization that was trying to make their presence known and have their rights respected. So, and they were very open with me. We talked quite a bit. Another person that I spoke to was no longer working for the government there, but she was working for the government during that time in January. So she was able to, give me a sense of the urgency and the anxiety.
Oh, tell me more. I'm curious.
Well, what a lot of people don't know, I mean, it hasn't been reported, but I don't think it's really captured the headlines much. They took it very seriously over there. I think some Americans here just thought, well, it's just Trump being Trump and
saying whatever he wants to say.
But they were not messing around over there. They actually prepared essentially battle plans to go to war with the United States to protect Greenland, which is just remarkable when you think about it.
And that harkens back to our own roots as a nation here.
Absolutely.
With the Minutemen.
I mean, we're going to be celebrating that in a couple of months.
Right.
So it's just kind of ironic that it's kind of getting flipped. But they actually sent, military hardware there, and they were prepared for it, and they were taking it very seriously because when that threat was made, it was done in the wake of having taken over Venezuela.
And I imagine that was probably a smart move because I have seen a pattern with the administration where they will say something and sort of take the temperature. So I imagine it was wise of them to prepare. That you never know if that made a difference or not.
No, I think you're right. I think they took that into consideration. Basically prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. So it wasn't like they were ready to start pulling the trigger.
Not a bad technique.
But yeah. So that's kind of the cloud, so to speak, that's kind of hanging over folks there. So when I spoke to people, I made it very clear to them that I'm coming as a friend. That I'm an artist. I'm just documenting what I'm doing. I gave them all my information so they knew I wasn't, some investor.
But can you imagine what it must be like, especially if you live there and you are used to being removed a bit from the craziness of the world and certainly of the news cycle that we've been experiencing in the past year or more, decade. But this must be so out of expectation for them to be so have everyone's eyes on them.
Well, it's out of the routine.
Yes.
It would be as if Russia announced we're taking over, we want to take over Southampton, But it's not just the United States because they're also in the crosshairs of China and Russia.
Right.
And one of their concerns of late is that they're concerned that, when the time comes and the war in Iran starts to wind down, that's going to offer an opportunity for attention to be redirected more intensely at Greenland. And also as the war in the Ukraine hopefully eventually winds down, that they're going to get more attention from Russia. So they're thinking about that.
So they're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, and there have been reports, it was just a report I read yesterday in the New York Times, that in the shorter term, they're actually concerned about next month and the month after, because next month, I think is June 15th, if I remember correctly, is Trump's birthday. And then we have the July 4th Independence Day. And their thinking is that he might use those days symbolically to elevate the idea of Make America Great Again by, again, redirecting attention towards acquiring Greenland.
It's a red, white, and blue land.
Yeah, so there's a lot of anxiety and concern. So a lot of the folks that I spoke to,
and certainly Cuba as well, which must be. I mean, are you going to go to Cuba? It's got to be a thought.
Yeah, I'd like to. I've thought about it in the past. I mean, these are things that I consider to be contemporary history, because the other thing, like with Nuuk. When I was there, I saw a great deal of construction going on. So they are expanding. They're building more apartment buildings.
How do you spell that, by the way?
Nuuk is N-U-U-K.
Okay, cool.
N-U-U-K. And
it sounds like a brand.
Yeah, it does. It's pretty good. It's
right?
Short and to the point.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of construction going on. So a lot of the photography that I've done, people will see cranes and containers and other construction equipment.
Like you're in Nashville.
So it's going to change over time. It's 5-10 years hence, the pictures will look very different. But just to go back to speaking to folks there.
Yes, please.
Most of them were again friendly, but they were kind of reticent. About getting into a discussion about it. One person who did speak freely about it, we kind of bonded because he liked looking at my cameras. He had the same camera I had. But his take, he didn't seem to take it very seriously. His thought was, in fact, his exact words were, Trump likes to say stupid things just to kind of get everybody riled up. So he didn't seem to take it very...
Or to distract from several things.
Or to distract, yeah. But other folks, again, kind of acknowledge it, but didn't really want to talk about it. But understanding where I was coming from on it, they were very friendly to me. I mean, I actually got stopped by the police while I was there. They were looking for a suspect.
Oh.
And it just so happened that the suspect, the only description they had was he was wearing a blue jacket and he had a camera. And I had a blue jacket and I had a camera.
And you're like one of like 5 guys in the area.
And again, it's a small...
And they've never seen you before.
It's a small community, so you kind of stick out. I have long hair and everything. I think I was the only one with long hair. Tall, I'm Hispanic. So they stopped me, and I was a little panicky there. I was like, well, am I on private property? Did I do something wrong? But they were very polite about it. Again, I explained myself. I gave them all my information. I even invited them to come see me in New York, and they come. But I mentioned to them, why I was coming. But even they were very polite about it and nice. They weren't antagonistic because I was American. But I can understand why there is some of that antagonism. One of the complaints that I've heard a lot and that I've read, too, is that they feel that the entire approach has been insensitive and disrespectful. A perfect example is just this past week, I think actually right now, the governor of, I think it's Louisiana, he was appointed by Trump to be the special envoy to Greenland. And so he's there right now, and his purpose was to go as a goodwill mission to make friends, and to, learn more about the country and meet as many people as possible. But the approach seems to have been clumsy from the point of view of the Greenlanders, because his way of connecting with people was offering them free MAGA hats and offering kids all the chocolate chip cookies they can have if they come visit the gubernatorial mansion in Louisiana. So there weren't too many takers for that. I went with the same idea of trying to make friends and to learn as much as I can and see things. But I didn't have any negativity at all whatsoever. So I think a lot of it depends on.
Well, I imagine
your attitude.
the recent events. I imagine at the sight of a MAGA hat would be something that I would bristle.
It's provocative.
Too, if I were in their shoes and were not interested in becoming part of the United States.
And unfortunately, it's not just the United States. So it's not just an American thing. One of the folks that I spoke to over there mentioned that there was a fellow from Germany who's a comedian on a television show there. Mm-hmm. And he went there in January when this thing was at its peak. And what he did was he went to the Nuuk Cultural Center, which is a big hub for community, and he hoisted an American flag just to kind of rile people up. So, and this is a German, and they just did it to be funny. They don't think it's funny.
Yeah.
So
that's like going to a graduation ceremony as a commencement speaker and bringing up AI to a group of, a graduating class of creatives.
Recently.
Yes, many times over.
And even while I was there, by the way,
yes.
I think it might have overlapped. There was a fellow who was like in his 80s. I think he's 84 years old. And he went there on his own, also on a goodwill mission to help the Greenlandic people. But he went around with a petition asking them to sign on for their support of having Greenland become part of the United States in some way, shape, or form, and offering them $200,000 in exchange.
I've heard of that. And now, I mean, these are things that all bring into very clear view why they would be standoffish. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop in so many different ways, both on a micro level with what is this guy going to say, and ultimately what will happen to us and, in the future.
Sure.
It's fascinating stuff. We do have to, I have to go just because we're almost done here.
Going fast.
And it always does. But I want to direct folks to your website again, just so in case folks are interested out there in seeing CO's photographs from his trip to Greenland, Xiomaro.com, Xiomaro. Are you going anywhere immediately to be showing these things?
I'm working hopefully on a book, so I'm looking for a publisher. I'm looking for someone who will exhibit it for me. So hopefully someone out there can contact me. I'm sorry?
Maybe they're listening.
Maybe they're listening. And in the meantime,
XIOMARO.com.
and in the meantime, folks can go to the Long Island Museum in Stony
Oh,
Brook.
fabulous.
And they can see several of my photographs on display there as part of the America 250 celebration.